Earlier in this chapter, I showed you a few ways of selecting and deleting objects, but let's go into it a little bit more because there's a few techniques that I want to make sure you know about. The file I have open is called Ornaments, and you'll find it in the Chapter 2 folder of the project files. We're going to start with the plain old regular selection tool. Now, if you want to select a few individual objects here and there, you can simply select them and then hold the Shift key down, and with the Shift key held down, select the others. Now, because I've selected objects all over the page, it's not really obvious to see which is which if you just look at the selection box, or the bounding box they call it. But if you take a look at the objects that I did click on, you could see the little anchor points there. Or, of course, another way is you could always press delete to see which is gone, and then undo. Press Command Z or Control Z in Windows. If you want to select a bunch of objects that are right near each other, you don't have to keep Shift, click, click, clicking all over the place. I'll just click on the background of the page here to deselect. If I want to select a bunch of these items, I'll just put my mouse pointer roughly over here, click and hold, and I drag, and I'm dragging a box. They call it a marquee box. Now, you notice that this box is touching 4 items, but it's not completely surrounding them. Doesn't matter. As long as the objects are being touched, they're being selected. Incidentally, as far as deselecting is concerned, I said that, of course, you could click on the page background to deselect, but maybe you're zoomed far in and can't see the background of the page. You could always deselect by pressing on the Mac Command Shift A, or in Windows, Control Shift A will deselect all. Okay, so now let's say we have a bunch of things selected. Well, so what? Well, now you can grab any of them and move them around. In addition to deleting them, you can resize them, recolor them, which I'm not going to do. We'll do that a little bit later. So that's what you can do once you have objects selected. Now, there's more ways to select than just by geography. You could also do it by color. And there's a really neat tool here called the Magic Wand tool. And that's right over here. You can click that. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. So Control plus or Command plus, either way, will zoom you in. Now with the Magic Wand tool, I'm going to click over here, and this has a red fill. And you notice that not only does that get selected, but this ornament and this one and this one. The Magic Wand cares only about fill. It doesn't care about stroke. So an object like this over here has a red stroke, and it's ignored by the Magic Wand tool. Add to the selection by shift-clicking an object. So let's say this one over here, if I shift-click this, not only does this get selected, but so does this. Also because they have the same fill, and the other objects remain selected. You can remove objects from the selection by alt-clicking or option-clicking on the Mac. So let's say I no longer want the red-filled objects to be selected. I'll hold down the Option key or the Alt key. Notice there's a little minus sign on the Magic Wand, and when I click, the red-filled objects are no longer selected, but these magenta-filled objects remain selected. I can get my regular selection tool back and do whatever I want to do with them. Move them around, resize them, do whatever I want with them. I also want to show you the lasso tool, and I'll deselect, press Command Shift A or Control Shift A in Windows, and over here is the lasso tool. Select that. This could be a little confusing. First of all, let me just select this object over here, and I'll take the lasso tool and I select, let's say, up through the shape like this, and I let go. You can see anchor points all over it are selected, but notice that you don't see the anchor points on the little tail. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on until you press the delete key, and notice that now you've deleted only the parts of that shape that you selected. I'm going to undo that. And you could do this with multiple shapes. Maybe I'll select part of this and part of that and kind of like that. So kind of looks like what I did with the selection tool when I was doing a marquee selection, except when I delete, now I delete those little bits and pieces that I selected. Again, let me undo. Now you might think, okay, well, that's interesting, but what am I going to use it for? Let's scroll down here. I'll just use the mouse wheel to scroll down. I'll deselect everything. Let's take a look at this little flower shape. I'm going to zoom in here. Use the spacebar to use that grabber hand. Now, let's take the lasso tool, and I'm going to lasso through everything here. So I went through these two leaves and through the stems. Now I'm going to get the direct selection tool here. And with the direct selection tool, I'll put my mouse pointer on one of the stems, maybe on one of the anchor points down here. And now I will drag straight down. And now I've made this a little taller. So I've made something useful. I changed the shape. Also, let's go back to the top here. I'll just again use the spacebar with a grabber hand. We've got all these little dots. And I'll grab the lasso tool and maybe something like this. And then I could delete that or undo. I can recolor it. I'll go and get the swatches panel. So if you want to make some interesting color patterns, that's a way of doing it. This technique is useful if you have a lot of little objects. Once again, I'm going to press Command-0 or Control-0 in Windows so I can zoom out to the full page. I want to show you how to use Select Similar. Click on this object here that has that magenta fill. And I'll go over here. Now, this is Select Similar, but before I click it, I want to click this down arrow next to it to set the options. Instead of all options, I just want to choose Fill Color. And now you see it selects all the other objects. Well, one other object that has magenta fill color. Or let's go back to red. I'll click this red shape, and I click Select Similar Object, and now all of these similar objects are selected. And if I press Delete, you can see they're gone. Again, I'll undo. Now what I want to do is select objects that have a similar stroke color. Now I'll go back to this object here. Now, instead of selecting objects that have a magenta fill, I want to select other objects that have the same stroke, and that's a dark red. So I'll go back here to the options, and I'm going to choose Stroke Color. And now you see it selects these objects, this one, and along with that one, that have a dark red stroke. This tool will also let you select objects that have a similar stroke weight. Click to deselect. I'll grab this one here and go over to Options and Stroke Weight. And now I have not only this object selected, but this object. Even though their strokes are different colors, they're both the same weight. And you can see up here, they're 4 points. So that's a very useful feature. Let's say if you have a lot of objects on the page, maybe some are hidden, and you know you want to select them all, but maybe you can't see them, or maybe it's hard to click them. That Select Similar is a very good tool to use.